So let me just start with what I'm going to showcase are elements of the Red Giant VFX suite, primarily the flagship product, which is Supercomp. So we will talk about the optical glow, which is one of my absolute favorite. And actually tomorrow I'm talking about lens flares that you can build from scratch. I'm a regular on the all the webinars, and we end up talking about all kinds of interesting topics wrapped around motion graphics or live action video and 3D, of course. But just want to remind you that Red Giant is still, for everybody that's doing video and doing video post-production, the Red Giant family is still a part of Maxon. So let me just switch over to my After Effects screen here. Let's go here to my slides. So today, right now, the last session, I'll be talking about VFX with ease, meaning how you can do a quick comp and you can just kind of cheat and make things a lot easier, and you don't have to have a million comps, because typical situation, you end up with something that looks like this, and it's just a really big mess. So the Supercomp effect, which also has its own panel, is going to be your best friend in this instance. So I'll show you how we can get to a really good down and dirty, just get things in there and get them integrated and make them look realistic within minutes without having to do 50 comps just to get it to work. So if you use After Effects and end up doing comp and comp and comp and comp, you'll see how this can be a lot easier and everything is managed inside of this interface. So Supercomp runs in 32-bit float point, no matter what your project setting is. So if your project setting is 8-bit, and I'm actually going to go, I don't know if I'll go as low as 8-bit. I just can't do it. But 16-bit, I'll leave it at 16-bit and pretend it's 8-bit. But, you can go as low as 8-bit, but all your work that you do inside of Supercomp is going to be in 32-bit float point. So you'll have all the range there, and you'll be able to work with the color and everything inside of Supercomp at 32-bit. It's also GPU accelerated, so it's not just weighing on CPU. As well as it's gamma managed. So if you're working with any kind of footage and you know that it has a specific LUT, or it's linear versus log, or it's video, you can actually do gamma management inside of there, as well as add grain to cover up any imperfections or if something looks almost too perfect. So let's just start with, let me show you where we will end up. We'll end up with something that looks a little bit like this, where, as you can see, there's a little bit of heat blur, right? So we have this displacement map, and it's even, this whole interface here is intelligent, meaning, let me just pull up the Supercomp panel. Let me just show you what it looks like. So this whole panel lives inside of After Effects, and instead of going to Window and then go to Extensions, like if you were to go for Colorista or for the Universe dashboard, it actually has its own window that's native inside of After Effects, and you'd find it under Maxon VFX Supercomp. Now, this effect, it's hard to just call it an effect. It's actually a full-on interface inside of an interface. But you have so much inside of here, and it manages all of your project for you, or all of your composition for you. So let me show you how we get to this point. But this is the panel, and this is what it looks like. All right, and I'm just hitting the tilde key to get us full screen and to take us back into our full interface here. So one thing that you can see, I'll just grab this text here, and I'll show you. Grab this text and just move it around. And you can see if I move it over here, now it's outside of that flame, and now you're not seeing any distortion. You're not seeing, now when I move it back, you're going to see that it interacts with that fire, because that fire is a displacement map. And it's relatively easy to get to this point. And if you're familiar with the way that a lot of the Red Giant suites are, there's a designer, right? So in here, there's also presets, just like in Magic Bullet. So you can do VFX work with presets, but there's also little recipes and things that you can do from scratch, okay? So not every single thing is a drag and drop. Now, if we go here, to get to Supercomp, all right, Supercomp would load up as an effect, but you can literally put everything together just in a composition. So I have everything here. It's just in a composition. I haven't done anything with it. I'm just kind of putting it there for the sake of like, all right, everything's in place. And now I want to actually work and integrate it. So from here, I'm going to apply the Supercomp effect. But to do that, I'll just go to my effect controls. Actually, I'll just do Supercomp. Just double click on this and just throw it in here. As soon as you do that, it does one of two things. It'll open up the panel. If you don't have it forward, it'll pop it up. And then the other thing it'll do, it'll immediately populate and it manages every single thing inside of your composition. So what it does is it creates a solid, right? And that solid just lives on top. And everything inside of there, render order, and nothing really matters anymore because it's all handled by Supercomp. So now everything lives under the hood of Supercomp, meaning it's also in 32-bit and it's also GPU accelerated. So let me just show you. Now that I've turned this into a Supercomp setting right here, there's all the available source layers that live inside of here. Whatever is inside of your comp is being read by Supercomp. So I can go in here. It's hard to look at that. There's a little bit of a delay on that. So here, I'll go here and I'll start with the background. I'm just going to start to build this stack up. And then I'll twirl this back. So everything that's available inside my composition will pop up here on the left. And if you add anything into your composition that you're currently working in, it'll pop up in there too. So if I were to add new text or if I were to add any kind of item that you have, whether it's a generated item, a footage layer, anything, it'll pop up inside of here. Now, if I twirl this back, then I go, let me just tab back out of this full screen. And you can see, I can actually still go in here and animate anything I want. I'm inside of Supercomp, it's mainly for integration. It's to actually comp things together and make them look realistic. So for the meantime, that orange bar serves no purpose, and I'll show you a little bit later what it does. All right, but let's just go through here, and I'm going to show you how I can quickly get things to look a little bit more natural. All right, so I'll turn off the text, and let's just start working with our robot here. So here's our backdrop. We got a little bit of this haze, this mist. But before we even do that, let's just work with the robot. So I'm going to go here, and I'll split the difference and make this a little bit more like this. So go and click on the layer that I want to work on. So here's my robot, here's my subject, all right, and here's my background. One thing I want you to know before I even start that is that the type of layer that this is, if you have anything that you already put into screen mode, like you want to just drop all the dark colors from it, if you have anything in screen mode already, it's read by Supercomp and it changes your layer type. So these layers were additive mode because they were already set up as screen mode inside of your timeline. Okay. So if you set it up ahead of time with the intention of using them in an additive mode, then it'll read it in Supercomp. So it's just one less thing you have to do. So if I go here, and they also change color, by the way. So there's three types of layers. There's a displacement layer, the additive layer, and the normal layer. Normal layer just has different options. And you'll see the different categories pop up when I use something that's additive versus something that's just a regular layer type. So let's go back to our robot here. And the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to hit this little plus button. And then you get this little wheel that pops up. And inside of this wheel, you have all these little things to help you integrate everything into the scene so it looks a lot more natural. And typically, each one of these things would be like 3 or 4 comps just to get you to this spot. So if I go here, I'm going to go to color correction and just add color correction first. And there was a new update for Supercomp that just gave you this button right here. All right. And this button is pretty much, it's magic. You click the button and then it just matches all your black level. So depending on where the lowest point in your image is, so if I were to go and move, let me just move this robot over and I'm going to hit that button again and you're going to see the difference. So if I wanted that robot to be kind of like not as far in the distance, but almost like right parallel with this island here, I'm just going to go grab this robot and move him around. And move him over here. And then I'll click that button again. And you can see that based on the darkest values from where that robot is sitting, that's how you're going to set and match the black point. So it kind of fits it into the scene by just mirroring the black point of wherever the lowest pixel value is in that area specifically. So you can also do, you know, if your initial idea, right? If your initial idea is to make them seem like they're a little bit closer in, then I would match to the closer to whichever point in the scene that you are. So if I go here, I'll just move this over. And let's do another thing here. I'm going to show you how you can also add, there's a little light wrap. And whenever I'm doing any of these things, you might be able to see in the top corner here, like everything that I'm doing, you'll see an isolated view with an alpha channel. So you can actually see with the checkerboard what's happening to this, my individual layers. So if I go here, I'm just going to crank this light wrap up so you can see what exactly happens. So basically, if you look, you'll see it in here. And it kind of looks like it blends a little bit better with the environment. You'll see that it's lightening up the arm and it's intelligent. So it's based on the pixels that are right around it. So whatever's in the environment, that's what's helping it. It's rewrapping it around the subject. So you can dial this in to where it looks a little bit natural, right? I'm not going to do it perfect, but I already have a perfect one set up. But I just want to give you that idea. And then let's move on to, I'm going to show you the edge erode. So this model here is just a toy that was shot with an iPhone. So it has a little bit of an edge and it kind of looks a little plasticky. But to integrate it a little bit better, we want to shave off a little bit of that edge so you don't see the plastic imperfections. All right. So I'll just drag this out a little bit. And you'll start to notice, I dragged that out drastically. So let me make that like 80. Let's take that back. And you'll start to see, all right, so if I turn that on, turn that off. So it just trims that back based on wherever your alpha channel is, right? So it trims it back and it just does all the edges. So now it looks like a little bit more clean and it doesn't look like it was just shot from an iPhone of a toy, right? So this will integrate a little bit easier. So already I have kind of a recipe going of color correction, edge erode, and then light wrap. I'll show you there's a couple other things that you can do in here. So you can also do this volumetric fog. And also another one is you can basically cast light back on your background. So you can do a reverse light wrap as well. But let me just show you this volumetric fog here. So kind of get like the God rays, right? So you can add that to your subject here and you can kind of, if I wanted to make that denser, if I wanted to adjust where they're coming from. And you'll be able to see also, like if you wanted to come from top down. So he's kind of standing there and then like the rays are kind of shining down, right? So you can organize it however you like. And the best part about it is like every single slider here makes complete sense. It's really easy and it's just simplified. So you don't have to go down and say, I need to blur this. Let me pre-comp that. Let me go back to this. Let me jump back into this composition. You can just do it right here. So this would typically take a little bit more work, but instead it's just a single additional effect that you just add. So if I go here, I'll just go to, let me add one more. I'm going to go to the sword. So I have this sword right here, and I even have a cutout of the sword on top of the sword, right? To make life easier. I think I showcased that when I moved it a little too far. So let me shift it back so it sits right on top. And that's where it was intended to be. Okay. Now, this one is an additive layer. So in here, I'm going to use the optical glow. But before I go and add this optical glow, let me show you a little sidebar on why optical glow as an effect is pretty amazing. So it's one of my favorite effects. So these are literally just, let me go to my effect controls. I'll turn this off. And that's just a shape layer. So I can make lights from a shape layer. I can do like all of these things have this really beautiful natural like fall off. And they'll actually cast light on a subject. So you can use them in many different ways. And the same engine that is used for optical diffusion in Magic Bullet looks, and also the lens flares, has the same natural fall off. This is what this is right here. So this is probably one of the best glows on the market. And this is not a PlayStation commercial. This is just a bunch of solid colors just going down the line. And just to show you, let's just isolate, and I'll show you one here at a time. So things that you can control with this, right? You can control where your gamma is. So if it's video, you'll see that it's a little bit more defined, and it's just kind of, you don't have that full bandwidth. If I turn it back into log, just look at how much more range that I have that I can work with. Now I can kind of glow it out like this, and it has a nice natural fall off, and I have a little bit more to work with. So if I drag this out, and if you look, still no banding. So that right there alone, I want to say even if I turned my After Effects project into 8-bit, which I'm not going to do here today, you would still see this with a nice natural fall off. So you can also control this to the point where if you had peaks in your image and you just wanted to use the glow, you can only highlight just the peaks, and you can isolate the glow to just the peaks. So it's a really nice way to kind of accentuate anything that might, you want to show, something like the tip of the sword, and the tip of the sword has like, it's only white up here, and it goes to a gradient down here, and the tip of the sword will just flash. And you can do that with just highlights only right over here. But you can also control the fall off. So let me show you the fall off here. And I can dial it back. Now I'm just kind of going crazy with it, but I can dial that back a little bit. Sorry, my screen is tiny here. So I'll control that a little bit more. And then also there's this new feature here for radiate. You can kind of make this pulse with the radiate feature. You can even choose the direction, like I did with those God rays. You can choose the direction from where it radiates. So if I click here, you can have it like radiate from the top, right? Or even like radiate from any one of this areas here, and you can see, and you can animate this too if you want. Everything here just has like, everything's completely keyframeable. And of course, you can colorize it. What I would actually do is go back and just change the fill. So if I change this fill and I made that red, right? Now you can see that it's just gonna glow natural red. But you can also take something, the core is white, but I can also change the outer glow. So I can just basically go in here and let's change, see how it says colorize? It's giving some flavor to it. But I can also go to inner tint. Let's just make the inner tint blue. Now you can see a little bit of the color dynamic has changed. And then I go here to the outer tint, and let's just make this one red. Now we got this crazy looking purple thing, right? So you can really tweak the colors, play with the inner and the outer, right? And now I end up with something that looks pretty magical. I mean, for a glow effect, that's pretty impressive. Like I said, you can use just a solid object you can use text, and the text will look like a neon sign. And that's basically a generated item inside of After Effects. And you can make it look like something that you generated from a 3D program or something. So for what this is, it's pretty incredible. I'll just reset these back to white, and then I'll show you just kind of going across the spectrum here. You can see those back. And let me turn these on just so you can see the full dynamic. I mean, I definitely cranked the other ones. I cranked this one here, but you can see, for what it's worth, you can get a lot out of just drawing something on the screen and applying the optical glow effect. So I'm a big fan of that, and I'll show you how you can actually use this in Supercomp. It's available as one of the effects inside of Supercomp. So let's just go back here. And now I'm going to make this sword, right? So now I can go back to where I was before. I'm going to make that sword glow, and I'm going to use optical glow to do it. So I'll go back. Let me just zoom in. And let's just go back to Supercomp. Inside of Supercomp, I'm going to choose sword, and then I'm going to hit the plus button. And inside of here, one thing that you should pay attention to is based on the layer type, I'm going to see that I have different options pop up. I don't have everything now I have different things that I can interact with because of the layer type. So I'll click here and I'm going to go to optical glow. There's also layer glow, optical glow. That's my glow of choice. So when you first apply it, it's a little obnoxious. So you might want to dial it back. Let me just make this like 10. And then I'll change that size, make it 15. You can kind of eye it and just see what works for you best. Adjust the fall off and even radiate. And let me dial it back just a little bit. Make it, so I'll make that size, maybe, there it is. So amount, meaning how potent it's gonna be. You know, how much light do you actually have? And then size is just how much is it gonna glow? How much is it gonna spread? So, and then I can do those same things that I showed you before, right? I can adjust that highlight roll off. I can also do, you know, that didn't do much right there because it's just pure white here. But if I did, let's do radiate. And then I can also pick, of course, where it's coming from. And you can see it here. If you look right here, you'll be able to see, I'm just moving the X value. So if you didn't want it to have this crazy trail, maybe you wanted it to poke out of the front a little bit. Maybe push that over. So you can dial that in however you like. They're also keyframeable, but it's really like the details just sell the effect that much more. So, and again, you can colorize this. Go in here and go to, all right, and that's what it's called, colorize. I didn't just make it up. All right, so if I go here to tint, I'll just change this color. So I have like this blue outer tint. And then on the outside here, this is my saturation, all right? So these color wheels are the same color wheels that are used in the colorista effect. So inside of here, I have luminosity. So I can also bring this down. Or I could pump it all the way up. And then I'll make this blue and I'll go into the outer. That's the outer tint. I mean, that was the inner tint. Let's do the outer. Just grab the puck, drag it down. Now I got this kind of crazy looking blue glow. I'll desaturate just a little bit so it's not so obnoxious. And you get a good effect if you mix, you know, one color with the other, like I did with the purple. I mean, creating purple, you know. So, you know, this is subjective. You know, if you don't have absolute direction on it, like have fun with it. Try to make it look, you know, a little bit more fun than just a glowing white sword. So now that I have this, I can also, I want to show you something with this bar here. And I'm just going to move the stacking order. Now, no matter what happens inside of the timeline, I'm going to move and adjust the stacking order inside of Supercomp. So you can literally take everything that you want to work with, put it in a good spot, leave your layers really sloppy, and just go in here and then reorder things the way you want to reorder them. So I'm going to move this here and I'll have the robot and I'll put it right underneath the robot and I'll show you why. So now I have it here and let me just zoom in a little bit. I'm going to click on that robot and I'm going to go, let's go to light wrap. It's my color correction. Here's your road. Here's my light wrap. If you look right here, look what the light wrap is doing. So because I just put that bar there, any pixels that are around it, it's going to pick that up. So you could, you know, either color correct things or add a little hint of something or put a glowing item there and it's going to shine on whatever your subject is. Yeah, you could do reverse. Yes. So I can do, like, here's the light wrap, on and off. So another thing you can do, let's say, for instance, there's 2 burning questions, I'm sure, right? You can turn off all things, all effects on a single layer. So this layer right here has like 4 effects going on. I just go up to the top and I click the button and they're all off. But let's say I like the recipe for that, and I'm trying to integrate something that's going to be placed right next to it. What do you think the next thing I'm going to show you is? Just right click, copy all effects, and then you can go to whichever other item, and then right click, and then just paste effects. So you don't have to go individually, you don't have to recreate it, you don't have to make it a preset and then drop it. So the idea is once you've already done the hard work, now you can just copy from that hard work and drop it on the next item. So if I'm in here, now I have the eyes, which are these tiny little specks here that you can probably barely see. But as soon as I put this effect on them, you'll be able to see. So let me just move up a little bit here, and I'll zoom in. And I have a set of eyes on top of these eyes that are already tracked in. So what I'll do is I'll go here, and of course, I'm going to add optical glow. I moved them out of the way. So let me move them back. So here's the thing. Everything that you would normally do inside of a comp, you can still do. You do your animation, you type out your text, right? This is really for integrating your scene. This is for getting things to look realistic. This is for getting things to match together. So anything that you think of that you want to do, you can still do, except you don't have to go in and do all this pre-comping to make them fit. That's the benefit of this effect. So I can also add this, where is it? Let me just go to my optical glow, and I will push the amount a little bit further down. I'll make it at 10, and then I'll change that size. Should update here, and then also I will adjust the radiate. It's very subtle because they're small, but if you actually look, now you can see some, maybe like 2 tiny glowing pixels up there. That's the isolated view. So, and you can see if I turn this off, just the difference that makes. So anything that needs to glow, anything that you put on a separate layer, anything you do with masks, if you do anything with 3D, you can add all kinds of different elements, stuff that you do in Cinema 4D, you can put into a scene that's here, all right? So for right now, let me just zoom out a little bit. So the reason for that bar, like I said before, is I'm doing a light wrap. So you can use anything in your environment. So I introduced that bar into this environment. And the idea is that you're getting a little bit of light wrap and it's spilling. Okay. You can also do the reverse light wrap, and then your subject will spill back on the background. So it's a little less work for you to do in post. A little is an understatement. So let's look at the fog here, the mist, all right? Now here's another little thing to do. I'm going to click on here, and I'll click on a few things that to make this thing a little bit more believable, right? Let's go to Edge Erode and actually Core Matte. Where's my Core Matte? I'll take it back. Edge Erode. And now I will go to adjust this amount. And you'll see starts to look a little bit more believable, right? Because mist is not just like opaque, 100% opaque, So you want to see something there. So this looks a little bit more believable. Now that it actually looks like mist, and you can see that it's not just 100% dense and it's not stock footage, right? Or is it? Now, if I go here, I'm going to add one more thing, and I'll change this one. This is blur behind. So if I add blur behind, let me just crank this up a little bit. Crank that up a lot of it. Hold on. I'll change the size of it. And again, this is very, my mouse just went nuts here. So this is very subtle. So whenever I do that, it's blurring back on itself. And it kind of makes for a nice soft light back there. So if I turn this off, I don't know if you can see that so well on the screen, but it kind of just gives you a little bit more dynamic there. So it makes it a little bit more like hazy, right? So it makes that fog look a little bit more believable. You can also go in, and what if we just want to change the color of that fog so it kind of fits in that scene a little bit better? I can click here, and I'll go to color correction. Yes, I can match, right? Just click the button and now it matches, but it matches darkest point and it kind of shifted my color a little bit. What if I wanted to make it a little bit more blue? I'll just go down here and grab, I'm gonna go right here to where it says gray point, and that's my midpoint, right? I'm just gonna grab this and drag this over. And then I'll pump this up, saturate it a little bit. And you can see it made it a little bit blue, right? Maybe not too believable. So you got to play with this to make it, that's evil fog, right? It's like dark and blue, like Game of Thrones fog or something, right? So when I do this, again, you can adjust. So do it to taste. If you don't like what you do, you know, go back and forth. All on, all off. Just each one of these, you don't have to go the full amount. So if it starts to look good, right? I look at it as like you're averaging out your effect. So if your effect is on and it's at 100%, but you like where all the sliders are on, you like what it's doing, right? Change that to 80%. And now you just kind of averaged it down a little bit. So you didn't necessarily take away the full saturation. You didn't take away the full opacity. You just kind of dumbed down the potency, took the potency down a little bit because maybe it's too much flavor and you don't need to have that much. So not a bad idea to go in there and just shift the amounts. It's not always going to be correct when it's at 100%. So let's just go down the line here. And this one right here, oh, that's the eyes. And I think I just have one thing on the eyes, but so back to what I was saying before, depending on the layer type, however this is deemed a additive blend, or this is just a regular layer, right? Or a standard normal layer, right? The options completely change, but it doesn't mean that you have to have it as an additive layer. You can change it and use it differently if you like. So if I were going here, let me show you another version of this. There's a few little tricks that I love about this effect. What I mean effect, Supercomp. If I go in here, let's just go to this other setup that I have, and I'll show you. This is kind of, you just jammed a bunch of things in here. They don't really, the colors don't work. Nothing really fits. I just put text there. I just put some masked item there that was rotoscope. And I just put this like, another great effect in the VFX suite is the lens flare effect. So I just kind of put that there. There's two ways that I like to work and kind of relight the scene is add the real lens flares, or I can add the sun shape. Now let me just show you this. So this is what will end up looking like. It looks something a little bit like this. We have this natural glow and things look a little bit more organic, right? But I'm just going to start with the shape for the sun, and then I'm going to add some glow to it. So let's go here. Everything's like where I want it to be. If anything was animating, I want to say I put a displacement on the text. So the text looks like it's a hot day and the text is kind of moving. So, and then it's just flat artwork and some rotoscope video and then the shape right here. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to apply Supercomp. Just double click it or just drag it honestly, and just throw it on any layer and then boom. So it puts the solid there for you and it applies the effect. Now, it understands everything inside of my comp. And then I'll just go here. And again, it doesn't matter where things are in the stacking order. This available layers. I'm going to add the background, right? I'm going to add the sun. And I'll add the real lens flares and the text, right? And then I'll add my subject, right? And this ain't there yet. So it takes a little bit of work to get it there, but not that much. So if I go here, I'm going to change this stacking order and then also adjust, each layer. So actually I have this in there twice. Just so you know, whenever you are working in here, if you have it in there twice, or if you had, I tend to make my graveyard underneath the background layer and lock it and make it a shy layer and keep things out of sight, out of mind. Same thing that you might do in Photoshop. You have your little treasure chest of artwork that lives underneath things. You hide it and sweep it under the rug. So I tend to do that. So if there's one more of the same thing, That's just, another version that I had in there. But if you accidentally do that, you can always just hit delete in here. And it's no harm, no foul. It still lives inside of your comp. So now here I am. I have all these layers. I'm ready to start making this look realistic. So should I start with the sun or should I start with the subject? Let's do the subject just so it's not so stark and just sticking out there, right? So I'll go here and let's go to the subject. And right now it's set to video. But I know for a fact this was shot with a Sony camera in S-Log, right? So I can go here, and something that was added is that you can actually change the gamma. So I can go here and change this to Sony S-Log 3. And then immediately you can see a shift in the image. Now it looks a little bit more lifelike. I was breathing life into it now, right? So another thing I can do, if I know that this is going to be translucent and he's kind of going to sit back in the clouds like he's looking down over you, all right? And I'll change this to like 60%, all right? Or this is more like an 80%. There you go. Now I'll go hit the plus button, go to color correction, and then click that magic button, match background. So then just like that, again, lowest pixel value, highest pixel value, and there it is. It set the black point, and now that kind of looks like it goes right into my scene. But again, nothing's perfect, right? This came from rotoscoped video. So I'll go here and I'll hit the plus button, and I'm going to go to edge a road. And you'll be able to see it if you zoom in, or you'll see, just like you're looking at the mat right here. Let me just zoom in. And you can see sort of an outline there, right? Kind of lives on a layer. So let's dial that back. So I'll go here and just crank up the amount. And you'll start to see I'm shaving out a few of those pixels, and now it's starting to look a little bit more clean, right? Not to the point where it's actually eating into the skin, but to the point where I just basically cleaned the edge off, right? I've eroded the edge. And then you can also adjust how much. So the amount and then the size. For right now, 2 is fine, but I'm just cranking the amount right here. And now you can see from before to after. And a lot of the times when people use green screen, that's what you end up with. You end up with something like this, no matter how great you are at green screen. Although we do sell products that fix that if you're doing green screen. So now that looks a little bit more realistic. It seems like it fits a little bit better. Now let me show you on this shape right here. I literally just have the shape of the sun, which is just a circle that I generated in After Effects. And I'll go here and I'm just going to apply the optical glow. And that's an interesting default, right? But it's not perfect. So let me change the amount of the glow so it's not so potent, but I want to kind of blend it out, right? So it's actually going to cast light on my scene. So I'll go here and I'll just change this back. Let's make this 10. And I'll go to my size here and I'm going to increase the size. And you'll start to notice what it does to the pixels around it. So crank up the size. I'll make this maybe 15. And then I can even go to radiate. Just kind of crank that up. And then also, of course, I want to make sure that it's not just, that's an interesting look, but if I wanted to keep things in context and make them look a little bit more natural, set that somewhere in the center there. And you can actually do that with crosshairs if you go back to the effects control. I know it works with the other effect. I'm not 100% sure if it works with this one, but the idea is now I made that sun look from, just this flat object. Now it glows. Now it looks a little bit more natural. You can adjust and just kind of push this, right? So I can take this and I can even make it, cast a little bit of red, a little bit of orange, right? So let me just push this a little bit. And then another thing, right? So let's go back to the layer itself. See how it says gamma as video? Let's change that gamma and let's make it low. Look at what happens. The way it interacts changes it, right? You see that? So for this one in particular, we're going to leave that as video. So if something starts to look a little too perfect, a little too CG, you can crank up grain here. That's how you cover up all these things that look like really synthetic, right? So if you want it to look a little bit more lifelike, add some grain, add some imperfection in there, right? But that glow really does a lot of work for that scene because it actually, you can have that glow pop out. And if I look here at the road, let me just highlight this. And you can see it casts a little bit here. I can crank it up a little bit more, but before I even do that, I want to talk about this right here. So this I generated from the real lens effect inside of the VFX suite. And this really mocks up the sun and it almost washes the whole image. Now, by default, it kind of, you would say that it kind of changes the whole like image, but you can tame it and you can do, see here, core matte. So now I can actually choke the matte and bring it back. And I have this big wash all over my image, but I can also just choke this matte a little bit. So let's just shrink that size. And you'll start to notice it a little bit. So if you go before and after, and then you can soften it, of course. And the density of the inside of that matte, right? All of this, how dense those pixels are. And then also even you can blur any details. So you're hiding your secret sauce. Nobody knows, right? So all I did was just kind of cast a wide net and make this big, giant, glowing orb. And then I just kind of tame it back. And when you tame it back, it makes it look a little bit more believable. So the idea is that now it looks a little bit more like the sun. It's not just this giant thing that washes out the highway here. So if I click back here, you can see the difference between that and that. So these are all just little things that just change the way that that's going to interact with the other layers. So if I go here to this text, let's see what we can do with this text. There's a couple things we can do with it. So I'll go here and I'm just going to add, why not add, we can do some diffusion. I'll just crank this up, the amount of it. So it's a hot day, you're getting the sun rays, and then you also, my title has now got sun rays coming off of it, right? And you can adjust that and kind of push that out a little bit. And this would look a little bit better if I change the color, right? So if I made this color, I could always go back to the text. So whatever my original text was, just go to my original text, double click on it. And let's just change that color. And I'll make that more, I can even just grab the eyedropper and make it, it's the first time I'm doing it on this Mac. So I'll leave that alone for now. And let's go here. I'll just kind of make it blend into the scene a little bit more. I can either go this like teal or I can go orange, right? Very Hollywood, teal and orange. So go here, change this up. And I'll just bring this in. And I can also adjust and make this, I can either blend it in or I can have it, just kind of sitting here. I can add a shadow to it. And there's a whole effect just dedicated to making shadows that look believable that's available inside the VFX suite. But for this, I'll just put it here. And I'm also going to, let's add, if I went to color correction, I can also match the lightest, darkest values again. But for something like this, it's not necessary because you want that title to poke out a little bit. So you can also do just regular things such as like go into my background here. And let's say I wanted to tame the background as a whole and just make that 80%. So I'm kind of putting like a natural ND on it. So I'm paying attention to the other elements, right? So if I go here, and let's say, for instance, something about it just ain't working and I want to do some color correction and I can't. I can just go right to the background, click on color correction. And now I can set this differently. I can even like change this. It's pretty warm, or I can cool it down. And then when I cool it down, now the text pops a little bit more, right? But it does look a little bit hazy. So I probably need to dial that in and do some different corrections to my elements there, or I can warm it up. So you can make these overall adjustments even if you're inside of the Supercomp window or panel, right? And the major difference is this is exactly the same as Colorista, you know? So those 3 wheels, you can dial those in. If you use Colorista, you know, you got your luminance and your saturation, and then you have low point, midpoint, and high point of your image. So you can tame this however you see fit. I can go in here and I can actually drag everything towards orange and warm it up like that versus just going through the temperature. So, and of course, saturation or dial back saturation. If I dial back saturation, now the rest of my image pops, right? Now this is not competing with that. So the idea is this can also, this can make you lazy, right? But the best part about it is I can just throw a bunch of items in there, set them all up, and then go in here and start to make them look believable. So within Supercomp, and the fact that I can use optical glow inside of Supercomp, you can really achieve a lot of more lifelike comping without having to go 10 comps deep just to get a simple thing going. So again, just show you, here's my other one here that I set up. And you can see like you got, either the God rays, or you can have a little bit of fall off from the highlights. You can make it glow. You can do a little bit of, adjusting the black point. One thing I was telling you about before is like, depending on where you move, like, so if I move this image right here and I put it over there, like towards this orange, it's going to change and adjust based on that. So if I go, let's just do that real quick. And I know I'm here at the tail end. So let's just move this over. I'll move it to right about here. Now I'll go back to my color correction and I'll click match background. Now it's matching to there. Now I can just take it and move it back. Or I can even go to the red part of the image, right? And you'll see it's one way that you can work with like complementary colors. If this was here and that was there, now I can reverse them and I can take this element and borrow from that element, and then they work together in a different way. So, but anyway, just to recap, Supercomp, the easiest thing I could say about it is you have your own interface, right? It's very easy to work with. When you click these buttons right here, you're going to get everything inside of a small menu. And majority of these things are to help you integrate your scene. So everything that you do as far as animation, you do it still on the timeline, but everything that you do as far as integrating your scene and making it look more lifelike, that's something that you do inside of Supercomp.